least I figured out why I have a bald head. Takes a,
I'm right behind you.
It takes a fertile mind to support hair growth.
It's too many good thoughts, running around. That's what happens. It's a cost.
Yeah.
Price you pay. I'm going to see this electronic artist that I really love. I've listened to him forever. So we're talking about the ticket prices, and I'm going down with some friends. We can order tickets for it. It's down in Boston, and I couldn't believe the price. It was $15 per person. Couldn't believe it. I was like, it's not possible to see anything even remotely that price now.
Mm-hmm.
So it was. I mean, it's not as well known as like Paul Simon, but still, I was like, wow, that's wild.
Oh. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Peter Patton Hour here on WRFR in Rockland. And we're going to have a good time this afternoon, aren't we, Jason?
As always.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Jason Crane is here for next 15 minutes or so. He's very talented, very creative, very patient with others, I hope, so he can deal with me for the next until just about 5 o'clock. Anyway, welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, wow. Good to have you
I did
here.
a show. I think I was on maybe a year or two ago, maybe.
Oh.
Maybe not. Maybe. I know. I think we tried doing a show and we never were
Oh.
able to schedule it. So this is might be my first time
No,
on a
we've
show.
done a show.
We did do a show. It was a while ago then. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, thanks again for having me
Oh, yes.
on here. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, but thank you for coming in. And we can chat. And you can provide us with some music, and we'll just have a good time.
Sure. Yeah.
And early summer temperatures will be here forever once you leave here later on.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're experts on that. We've both been here long enough. Sure. Well,
Fellow Mainers.
yeah. So, how have you been?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Doing pretty good. Yeah, I mean, it was some new projects that kind of came up this year or this winter, which has been nice. So, yeah, doing okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And, you have some local gigs coming up?
Yeah, I mean, probably the coolest thing, at least for me, that's happened, and it's been a lot of fun, is I just started playing. It was around December we started playing, and then we just played a bunch of shows. But I started playing with this band Osmia from Belfast,
Mm-hmm.
which is a kind of this real noise rock punk rock band from Belfast.
Yeah.
And they're like a power trio, and they write all original music. And I'd actually been a fan of their music for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I saw them play at a music festival in Belfast about 4 or 5 years ago, and I
Yep.
really loved their music. And then I saw them about, I don't know, 3 or 4 other times after that. It kind of became like an official fan of their music. Um, their music is, I mean, trying to describe it, sometimes describing things is tough, but it's definitely like punk influence. It's got a real dreamy kind of shoegaze rock sound.
Yep.
And then their stuff kind of reminds me a lot of like early, similar to like early Sonic Youth kind of rock, which I really love. Pixies, big influence. Um, so they became one of my kind of favorite local bands, and I saw them play, quite a few times. And then last summer, uh, it just kind of happened where my band Quantum, my electronic band, we ended up playing at the same show together, and there was
Yeah.
3 or 4 other bands, and it was Quantum, and then Osmia was playing too. They were like headlining it, and
Hmm.
that was really cool. So I got to know those guys pretty well a little bit more, and
Right.
then or a little bit more after that, and then
Yep.
Leo, who is the leader or kind of the brainchild of the band. I met him at a bunch of like random shows that I was going to. I like to go out and see a lot of live music when I can and support local music.
Yep.
So I was running into Leo all the time, and then we realized we had he's a super awesome guy, and then we kind of had a lot in common, and then just through conversation I was like, hey, you want to get together and jam sometime. And then so he came over to my place, and we were just the intention of having some fun and jamming, and we jammed
Right.
for a little bit. And then at the end of the night he said, well, just to let you know, the drummer that they had in the band for a few years now, had just kind of decided to leave the band.
Uh-huh.
And so I
Yep.
was like, wow, I was really surprised. And Leo was saying that they had some plans to play more shows, but then like go on the road and maybe do a tour. And I said, yeah, he asked if I'd be into playing a couple of shows and whatnot. And then I was like, definitely. And then it kind of evolved from there. And this was like, December, late December. So, and then a couple of weeks into that, I just came back from a tour with them. We just went on
Mhm.
tour about, I know we've been back for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And we went on a pretty nice sized tour, and had a lot of shows in a relatively short amount of time, but it was super fun. And plus, all the music they do, Leo and Eric, and it's a power trio. It's all original music, and
Right.
it's super fun, super fun.
Um, excuse me, I'm going to put this other microphone back on. It's
Sure.
yeah, I'm having issues here with this one. Okay, there we are. Um, Yeah.
Got some juice now.
yeah, it won't be quite so so radical. I hope. Yeah,
Always,
You-
always radical.
yeah. There's enough radical in the world now.
Yeah.
So, where did you go on tour? Was here in Maine?
Yeah, well, we had like our first show, I guess my first gig with them,
Yeah.
the kind of launch of that tour was at Hey Sailor, which
Yeah.
is just a killer venue here in Midcoast. So the
Mhm.
first show was at Hey Sailor, and that was like kind of the launch, or it was my first time playing with them, and we had, I don't know, about a month or so of rehearsals. We rehearsed a lot, which was nice, but it was still a lot to kind of figure out and navigate, because it was still a brand new project. But
Yeah.
I love the material. So we had our first show at Hey Sailor, and then we had a show in Boston, and then we went down to Providence, Rhode Island, and then we had a few shows in Pennsylvania, and then we had a show in I think one or two shows in Washington D.C., and then came back, and the last show was in Portland.
Yeah. Cool.
And it was definitely like kind of a situation, seat of my pants, because it was like by the seat of my pants, because I virtually didn't really know these guys, and we didn't know how we would all get along, and we were going to be trapped together for
Sure.
pretty long time. But they're super cool, and I've done some touring before, and it was such a fun experience. And they're talking about doing another tour, and it will be probably a little bit of a shorter run, but probably in like late August or so. But it was super fun. Haven't gotten a chance to play big loud rock and roll in a really long time. Most of the bands I play in, or the rock bands, are on a little bit more on the mellow side. So that more aggressive rock is like kind of music of my youth. So it was nice to to do that. I had this ongoing joke, because when we started rehearsing,
Yep.
my endurance was pretty low, and because I wasn't really used to playing the more aggressive music in a while, and I was kidding around and saying before this tour I got to start like going lifting weights, to get ready. So
Sure. Yeah. I know it's like to need to lift weights. Yeah. It can be heavy duty.
yeah, literally, yeah,
Yeah.
keeps us young,
Yeah. I tell people working out in the gym keeps me young, active, and delusional. Yeah.
1 out of 5 doctors say yep.
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 Yeah. But and I've seen you a lot doing solo.
Yeah, it's this winter. Winters are always. Venues come and go all the time, and
Yeah.
there were a couple of years where there were like two or three winter time venues that were going really strong, and they both kind of folded this past year and kind of stopped doing entertainment. So usually,
Yeah.
so it made those previous winters like fairly busy, or pretty busy and good, economically for local musicians. And then those things kind of went away.
Yep.
And so I don't know, I try to make the best of most situations. So I used a little bit more of that downtime to try to keep my kind of my main band that I write for, Quantum. I tried keeping us busier this year
Sure.
and this winter, and so that was a lot of fun. We got to play a lot more. We played a lot more than the last couple of years during the fall and winter. Typically we stay busier during the summer, but I wanted to try to, with having more time and space, I tried to make the band a little bit busier this year. So it was nice.
Sure. Yeah. No. It feels good to be busy, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's I realize it's like, when we started this band with Quantum, which it's hard to believe it's close to 11 years ago, which is crazy. We actually had our first gig. I was talking to someone about this the other week, or last week.
Mm-hmm.
The Highlands Cafe, I don't know if you remember that place in Thomaston. That was, it's long gone now, but that was a real great little place for the local music scene, because what they did was they had music. They had an open mic that was a big thing here in Mid-Coast for many years.
Yeah.
But they were really great with like almost using that space or that venue as like a launch pad for a lot of like original projects. And I know like 2 or 3 other people that went there and played, like they had these new kind of original based projects, and the Highlands Cafe allowed them to use that space as a launch pad and to try out something new because it was all original. It wasn't like a cover band. And they did the
Right.
same thing for us with Quantum. So it was really nice to have that going. And we've been fortunate. Sometimes it prevents or presents like more of a hurdle because what we do is like it's all original stuff and people are expecting maybe to hear a DJ or hear songs. It's a dilemma of any band, like hear the cover tunes. So you're always
Yeah.
taking a little bit more of a creative risk when you're putting out your own material. But we've been
Oh yeah.
we've been really fortunate, and so I feel really grateful for everything that we've been able to do, considering we're just this kind of weird electronic group that just plays original music. So
Yeah. Speaking of music, did you bring some with you?
I did not bring any music
Oh,
with me.
oh.
No, I didn't. I
Oh,
didn't even.
cool.
I thought we were gonna just chat, but
No.
I didn't even think of that. So
Yeah.
my bad.
No, that's right. You have to come in again sometime.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
That can be done.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never had the Highland place in Thomaston.
Yeah, it was. It was probably about 8 to 10 years ago, or they probably closed. I mean, they were around for a few years, but they closed. It's probably like 7 or 8 years ago now. But
Yeah.
they had a lot of cool music. I think it's called the new place is called the Flipside Cafe. I could be wrong, but
Okay.
I've heard it's a really good like the new owners, the new business that's there where Highlands used to be is supposed to be really good, but I don't think they do music and stuff. But that back in the day of Highlands, so it was a pretty magical time because they had a really great open mic going on that was huge. And back during that time in Belfast, but Camden, Rockland, all over the place, there was like open mics, 4 nights a week. They still go on, but they're pretty sporadic, I think now. But so there was all those things going on,
Yeah.
and they used to have live music there all the time, and I know that they were, it was when we started getting those, economically things were getting, we were starting to get pretty hard. Not well, we are now to say the least,
Right.
but
Yeah.
but they were. I remember the owners of the Highlands. They were pretty steadfast, and they were really like 100% in trying to present this thing to the public. Like, we're gonna try to make this happen regardless, because we know financially we're not really making a lot of money doing this after a while. But they were still, pushing forward, and
Yeah.
you don't really get that
Oh,
too
yeah.
much from a lot of places. I think Hey Sailor is a place that generally really cares about, their artists and people that they work with, and and they're fans. They're actual fans of music, and so that goes a long way too, as opposed to just have a thing where it's just kind of plug and play and it's in the background.
Yep. Oh.
But there are. I mean, not that saying it. There aren't many. There are many groups, or many venues. I think in Maine that do support, and which is great because it's it's a difficult time with all of the factors with entertainment these days. So it's nice when you have that a little extra support. Goes a long
Oh
way.
yeah. Yeah. I've always liked the atmosphere at Hey Sailor.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, great food, and
Yep.
I went there. I had a friend of mine's band play there. Lucky Fool, Blind Albert, Vince Gabriel,
Yep.
and I've been friends with those guys for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Densmore, Glenn Dubois, and all those guys, and
Right.
they played there last weekend, and I got to see them there, and I was like, yeah, and I've seen him play billion times,
Mm-hmm.
and I've played with him a lot too. And I had said to them, "Well, it was nice to see you guys. It was like really the first time I've seen you guys on like a big stage with lights, and it felt like a concert, And so that's one of the other things I love about Hey Sailors. It actually feels, I think, from the perspective of a performer, and then as a fan, it feels like you're getting more of an experience of like going to an intimate concert or going to a concert or a show. Because a lot of times, you you could still have that experience, but a lot of times here, you know, with if it's a bar or a restaurant, obviously the music is kind of more treated as more of a secondary thing. So it's really
Yeah.
nice when you can
Yeah.
go and it's like
Sure.
presented as that or as such.
Hmm. Yep. Um, it's and typically musicians would be happy to be out there live a few nights a week, right?
Yeah, I mean that's ideal, definitely. I mean, you have like I feel like with musicians and people who play music, it's like you have different fractions of people who. It's interesting. Well, like it's interesting playing. Some experiences I've had, um, where like say a band, you have and it's comprised of like say three or four people,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe say four people are in the band, and there's like three of the people in the band have like a full time job, and they got this
Sure.
regular thing that they go to, and they have a family, and they have that set
Yep.
thing, and then you might have the two other people in the band that are kind of depending on that. Well, that's kind of their income. So
Yep.
that's always an interesting dynamic, and then you have that, and then you have people who look at it as, I mean, it doesn't diminish or not saying, or it doesn't mean that they're not taking it seriously, but then you have people who were doing it as like a more of a hobby, and they're going out on the weekends with their bands, and they're playing, this is the pay thing is not really an issue. They don't really think of that as a concept.
Right.
But
Yes.
that doesn't mean that
Yes.
they're not that. I mean, still a lot of those people who do that work very hard, and it doesn't diminish that. But I think it's different with musicians who are kind of dependent on it, and because it's tough, but you can do it, and there's sometimes I think that's sometimes overlooked by a lot of people, and maybe groups, and it's I don't know. It kind of it doesn't ever. It seems to have where it does kind of move a little bit as far as perception around it. But I remember a while ago we had a big talk about that with some friends, or I did,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a thing on social media. But we were talking about like I mean like musicians that I love and I admire, artists or film directors, painters, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like I realize like people that I really admire and look up to, the time and effort and passion they put into those projects and
Yes.
make them so good.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of time and detail. So, and I feel like that in itself, like that requires a tremendous amount of discipline. So when I was talking about this, kind of group discussion about that, like, um, I think like musicians in the area kind of provide, and anybody in the arts provides a real important thing for the community and society. I think it's incredibly, it's an ancient way of communicating ideas, and it's very important. It's therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many benefits from it, and it's a discipline, and so there's like we were talking about how like sometimes that happens with musicians of like problems of well getting paid, And we were talking about like making an analogy or comparison. Say like if you want to, one year you decide to paint your house, and you go to a painting company or contractor, and you they come and assess the situation, the painters or the company, and they kind of state or give you a quote as to how much it's going to be, and then they have the set fee. Same thing with a carpenter or anything, and they have the set fee, and then it's labor intensive, and they either will get that pay of what they're asking, or the job doesn't get done, and I feel like, and it's a trade, and I feel like at face value, musicians, I feel like it would be nice if they were regarded as that, as like they're providing a trade and a service, and in a lot of ways, if it wasn't a service, the world would be a little bit more darker.
Yeah.
And I feel like it would be nice, even though I don't think it does happen. I think in some ways it does, but where it could be, musicians could be maybe respected a little bit more, just on a real surface level of like they're providing a labor, they're specialists at what they do, and like a painter or carpenter or a really good mechanic,
Sure.
you need them, and we should pay them equally and fairly. But but there isn't that. Like people don't. Some people do. They have this perception of it's just a bunch of weekend warriors or buddies or people who just like hang
Yeah.
out and have beers with their friends, and that's you have some of that. Of course, there's stereotypes exist for a reason, because there's always a little kernel of truth, but generally I don't think that's true. But anyway.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And we do need a way just to get the voice of people out there.
In comedy, I mean,
Yes.
just that's it's an important medicine to have these days.
Yeah. There's a film out, I can't remember the title of it now. I saw it on the internet about how much music of the 60s changed the world. And maybe we need that again, or maybe that kind of movement can come from comedy this next time. I don't know. We need some new voice out there showing some hope. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. We certainly have enough of a reason and motivation to develop some hope.
When
Yeah.
there's the sense of I know for one of the certain obvious things we're going through, there's like a sense of obvious hopelessness, but I've been really surprised and given a little bit of hope with seeing how some people are with what they're doing with some of their time now, or along with dealing with some of these kind of outrageously scenarios that we're going through. So
Yeah. Yep.
but it's even more reason to enjoy something related to the arts, to be celebrated.
Yes. And there's always going to be some new elements in what's happening in the world.
Sure.
It's not exactly like it was in the 60s or back before that. Because the whole world grows and people grow. And things are going to be a little bit different, and we have to adapt to those changes.
Yep, very true.
And we can do that. It can be done.
Yeah.
Been done in the past. There's no reason why it can't be now.
True.
Yeah.
True that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm 78 years old now. Is it too late for me to learn how to play an instrument and get involved in it?
Oh no, it's well, it's funny you say that because I remember a long time ago somebody I knew that was a music teacher
Mm-hmm.
said, and I have pretty decent experience teaching, teaching privately, and I've taught at a couple of different schools, and now it's just like I kind of have students here and there, and teach privately, like you know, when things come up, or a lot of times if people ask me about it if they have an interest. So, but I remember a few years ago somebody I knew who was a teacher who were there. They were working in like the school district, and they were like, don't if you're going to take on students, don't take on anybody like older than you are or older people because they get stuck in their ways and they're really
No.
curmudgeon-y and they don't want to do it. But I don't really think that's true. I think
I
that's
don't
too
either.
I think
Yeah.
it's pretty general. And
Right.
I don't think, I think, for anything that involves like, well, the arts, but anything that involves discipline. I mean, I think it's a win-win thing because
Yeah.
you focus your focus. It helps you use your imagination. Those are really important. I had a friend. I have a friend, Mike Whitehead, who plays bass in Quantum, and we've worked on
Mhm.
projects for forever.
Yeah.
He teaches at Bay Chamber Music, and he's been there for a few years now. But he
Yeah.
has a jazz ensemble, and he was telling me about a bass player. I can't remember. I've met him once or twice, but there's a bass player there that I don't know if he's sure if he's in the ensemble, but he is active in the area now. He started playing upright bass at 82.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh.
he's in his, I think he's almost 90 now, and he's pretty active. He plays in, 2 or 3 groups, playing like bluegrass and some jazz stuff. And
Yeah.
so, I don't think, if you have your faculties and a little bit of sanity, you can go a long way. I think I see that because I have a big love of film and a lot of filmmakers that I love have that longevity too. I mean it's not like being a sports star, like you have that longevity. I think with music for the most part, and then with film if you're
Yeah.
in relatively good shape,
Yes.
and good and your faculty's still there and you're standing upright, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know people, because it's a common joke, and I appreciate it too, about standing upright, makes you an easy target. And that does in a way, but it also means that you can move quicker.
Yeah, yes, very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. People, if you're visible, you're going to be an easy target. And if you're not visible, and nobody can appreciate what you're doing. That's pretty much.
Yep, pretty much that sums it all up.
Yeah. When people tell me after not seeing them for a long time, that they miss me.
Well, of course, yeah.
And they,
You're kind of a local legend, so I totally
just tell them
get
that if they miss me, they just got to take better aim next time.
Huh. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think like what we've kind of known each other for, I guess, on and on. Well, known of each other, and then kind of got to know each other like, over the last few years.
Yep.
But I remember, before I think we actually met, because I like to, in my free time and when things are going on, I love to go out and see live music. But I remember always seeing you at like virtually everything that was going on in town.
Yep.
Wherever it was, Rockland, and
Yep.
then eventually I think it was at Fog Bar when there was the open mic going on then.
Right.
You used to come to that, and we got to kind of know each other then. But
Yeah.
I noticed you were really one of the biggest supporters of
Really?
local music, and whatever it was, and it's a really great thing. It's like it's important, and it's because it's a challenge. It's a challenge with there's a lot more temptation or reasons for people to stay home, and understandably so. So it's I think it's important. I think it's important that somehow this wacky thing that we do with local music or art or whatever it is, like somehow sustaining it, because it's always gonna, like you said, it's gonna, like, things are always gonna shift and change, but I think at the end of the day it's something that people will always want to some capacity. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's like, you just take the idea of, like, you know having an experience of sitting in a really comfortable chair and watching a movie, and really getting absorbed in it, or like sitting in a sitting down on a couch again, reading a really great book that you absorb yourself in, seeing a really great band, or going and seeing a beautiful painting for the first time. It's that same experience, like, that's part of our lizard brain, and I feel like that intimate experience won't ever go away, but I think everything around it, with how people will access those, or have access to those experiences, or how maybe they interact with the artist creating those things, is going to always change. But I think I think people will still always want those kinds of intimate experiences, because it's part of being human. So.
Yes, sure.
Or going to see comedy, or being made to laugh, which is one of the most important things, and one of the hardest things to do, is making people laugh. So that's why I think you always see that a lot of great comedians are really great actors. So
Sure. Yeah. They are. And, Johnny Carson, who used to have the Tonight Show, used to say that comedy is such a difficult thing to pull off. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Have you ever seen? There's a. I think it was called Comedian, and it was a documentary. And it was about Jerry Seinfeld, but it was after. Many years after Seinfeld's show went away, I think he kind of retired, and the documentary was about him trying to come back and, like, playing all these little comedy clubs.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really an awesome documentary, but you see, like, how hard it is to be just funny. Like, it's almost impossible. And you see there's all these sequences in the movie where he's, like, writing material, and he's, like, performing in these little clubs, and he's bombing. Like, and here he is, like, you're seeing Jerry Seinfeld, like, one of the most iconic comedians in the world, and you just see him falling just falling right on his face, because the material just isn't really connecting. And it's really interesting, because they really get into kind of the dynamics of, or, like, those ingredients that make a joke funny, or how you, like, relate that to the audience. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
And of course, that's a different style than what he used for his TV show. Which people were
very
used
different.
to.
Very different. Yeah, different, very different format.
I know it wasn't so much wrong. Maybe it's just that it's not what the people were used to and were expecting from
Sure.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a different way of conveying the comedy,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. It seemed kind of sad.
Without having the genius help, or help of the genius Larry David by your side.
Yeah. 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 Maybe that's been my problem number of years, not having geniuses would make tell me. Actually, there's a lot of comics around here, and they're all honest and not afraid to be creative, even if it's something that people aren't accustomed to hearing.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's, yeah.
Do they still do? I know they were doing like comedy nights and stuff at like Ada's and a couple other places. Is that still things or a thing that happens?
I think it's very rare. I can't remember when the last one was at Ada's, and I performed in a couple there, and I loved it. But, yeah, it's.
Because I remember I went there once. Went to one or two of them with Spencer.
Yeah.
He's got a show. I think he still has a show on WRFR. But he did. He ran sound for the comedy shows.
Yeah.
I know he did quite a few of them over the years. But anyway, yeah. So I was curious.
Mm-hmm. Emily Olga Dillon, I think, is still active.
Hmm.
Yeah.
She's a local comedian.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yes. And of course, people change. Audiences change. Like it does with music.
Hmm. Yeah, and with film too. Definitely, it's the same. Yeah. It's in so many ways, it's virtually the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, art seems to be that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And we have to keep it going. We need to have a voice out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually talking to a friend about. It was more film related, but because one of the things that I do, which is it's more than a hobby. I mean, it's kind of I just find it really fun, and it's kind of a passion or obsession for me. Is I collect and watch a lot of movies, so I run a couple of movie pages, Film Fanatic, that basically I just kind of talk about movies and sometimes have guests on the show and the channel, and I just talk about a lot of the movies I own that I love, and a week or two ago, a friend was, this kind of, I think it's all connected to what we're talking about, but a friend was commenting who is also, I am too, mostly just centered on the first three, but he's a big Lord of the Rings fan. And Peter Jackson, directed the first three, and it was announced that the studio, I think it was New Line Cinema and Peter Jackson, we're going to be making these three additional Lord of the Rings movies. And it was, and they've made, since the first three, they've made, I think, 3 or 4 other movies, which I don't think are very, very good. But so it was a pretty blatant thing of like, okay, the studio is, they're still going to milk this thing and try to like make it into something. And I know so he was talking about, it's just, what are people's thoughts of this news? And I kind of think of it as like, well, obviously, the Lord of the Rings thing is a franchise, and it's a huge franchise.
Oh, sure.
And, franchises aren't anything new, really. I mean, ever since The Godfather, and there's been, tons of sequels and franchises, but I think it's a little bit different now in this day and age, because I feel like we're just really inundated with, so many franchises, and I think now with kind of the tricky situation with studios, anything now that they deem to be a hit, they want to they'll tend to make it into a franchise or a sequel. Like they seem to cash in on that idea quicker. But I also feel a big part of it is that I generally feel like big Hollywood studios generally think that the audience, the mass audiences, or the mass audience out there, the consumers are just essentially just a bunch of, idiots that just want
Yeah.
they want to only explore the idea, or explore or see the same things over and over again. They don't
Yeah.
really want to.
Yeah.
They don't want anything new or original. So a lot of the studios will kind of milk these things and just play things safe. And so that's what this whole discussion was. But then I said, I was talking about those things, but then I also said, well, I love all kinds of films, but my favorite, I really love a lot of like super low budget films. That's my kind of my jam, like real low budget exploitation movies from
Yeah.
like the '60s and
Oh
'70s
yeah. Sure.
and beyond. Like that's my favorite. But I love big, Hollywood movies too.
Yeah.
But in this kind of discussion that we were having, and all these people were having about this whole movie thing. Um, Last year, 2024, was kind of an exceptional year for again my favorite genre is mostly the horror genre, and I was saying, 2024 was kind of an amazing year for films. Like there was a lot of great horror films and some really good films in
Yeah.
general.
That's true.
And I said, I threw out a couple examples, but I was saying like, well, you took a movie like The Substance, Demi Moore, that came out last year, um, and a couple other movies that had come out that were not commercial in any way. They were totally gonzo crazy, totally different, totally original, totally unique. And some of these films, most notably The Substance, made a ton of money, and it doesn't play into that whole thing that, well, just everybody just wants the same old rehashed ideas. I think that's a really bad generalization. I think people want those things. They want something a little bit different. They do want some new ideas because there's plenty of them out there, but it seems to get lost in this like
It does.
big kind of broadcast that like, well, no, we're just going to try to play it safe, or let's just have something that's like in this neat little package all the time. So
Yeah. I got 4 or 5 minutes left
All right.
here. So you have any films that in your plans that you're going to create that I could star in?
films, oh jeez, well, I actually probably 8 years ago now, I actually threw my hat in the ring of being a filmmaker, and I tried it. I worked on some video stuff,
Yeah.
video production stuff, and then I got into had this crazy idea of becoming a filmmaker, and I got into working on a film, and I made this short little it's a piece of garbage, short little vampire movie, and I shot it, and it was a 20-minute movie. It was like, and it cost quite a bit of money to make at that time, and it was a lot of work. It was super hard, and we had a premiere for it, and I try never to show anybody because it's still around somewhere, but it's hilarious and it's terrible. And I love a lot of terrible movies, but this is just kind of terrible.
Yeah.
But it was also, that being said, one of the greatest experiences I ever had, because it gave me a newfound respect for the art of filmmaking, and all of those kinds of desires and things that I had around making or becoming like a director. What I do is I put all that stuff into my band Quantum. Like the theatrical presentation and the influences from film. Kind of just dump all that stuff into Quantum, so it satisfies that need in its own kind of weird way. So, yeah.
You do you have any experience with films?
Yeah, I mean, just that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that one, and then I think it was a couple of years later. I started writing this script, and then I started working with a couple of people on this script for this film.
Yeah.
Another short film, but it never, I don't know, it was a lot of starting and stopping, and couldn't really nail the script.
Yeah.
You know, couldn't really get anything together. So I ended up
Oh, yes.
not. You know, we ended up not doing anything with it because the first thing I did was kind of this like really terrible like vampire movie. It was called
Yep.
Rapture, and then this new thing I was trying to work on was like kind of a mafia like hitman gangster movie,
Mhm.
but really low budget, and you know, kind of a different style, but yeah, it never went anywhere, so it just just kind of dropped it.
I yeah, I'm mostly background work, but I worked in a couple dozen
Yeah, you've worked on a lot
horror
of
films,
lots
and
of different.
just several hundred of them.
That's
I
great.
had film school up in Rockport.
Do you have any actors or people that you met that were that was where it was a really great experience, or
Well, most of them.
or not so great, not so great of an experience?
Well, there's a couple of those, and probably I would get mentioned a lot if you asked the bigger actors.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a couple lines in one film down in Boston, and
That's great.
oh, that was fun. I would do that again in fact, I'm still connected for that. Yeah.
And probably with main media workshops too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Rockport.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing place.
Yes, it is. Well, it's about that time. Do you
Right.
have any?
Well, I
comment?
mean, yeah. Well, this Saturday, the band Osmia that we were talking at the top of the
Yep.
hour, we're going to be playing in Belfast on Saturday at 8 o'clock with a local band that's really awesome called Phil Hummer and the White Falcons. That's going to be at the American Legion Hall at 6 o'clock. You know, and some other things coming up, and you know, my film page, Film Fanatic. If you type it in
Yep.
on YouTube or Jason Eagle Film Fanatic, will come up and you'll get onto my crazy page, and you can dislike it or like it. So, but thanks again, Peter, for having me. It's
Oh, well, thank
super
you
fun.
for coming in,
All right,
Jason.
thank you.
Yeah, Jason Crane. So, very talented, very creative, and
Thank you, Peter.
Thank-
Thanks
thank
for
you for being
all
here.
the support. Really
oh
appreciate
yeah,
it.
yes, thank you very much, and thank you all for tuning in, and catch up with you next week. And
All right.
once again, Jason, thank you
Thank
for
you, Peter.
everything. Thank you.